just like
Still wasn't
So I'm
there.
wondering if there was an instance the browser still running.
The control process was still spawned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I killed it a second time, and this time it came out.
How can you prove something about these?
Hello, welcome to the PA Tolkien Society here in Spokane, Washington. Running just a few minutes behind, but we will get started with the conversation momentarily. Thank you for your patience.
Is that a shaver or a microphone?
We'll see what this does as far as it's more directional like this.
Nice.
So if I point it that way, how much it will pick up, we'll just have to see. That's been the biggest problem is background noise when they do the espressos.
I was thinking about something like maybe a Polycom speakerphone type thing with its microphone technology.
Yeah.
Would help.
I
That
don't
would
know.
be good.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We've gotten the clip-ons. I've got a couple of those, and one works great, and the other one doesn't. So I need to get more of the one that works great.
Too bad you can't put up some barrier here.
Yeah. I've thought about buying a section of office cubicles for one padded piece.
I mean, that would absorb sound too. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, it blew up on here.
Are we
There we go. Okay.
broadcasting?
Again, you can play Lord of the Rings online.
Not as much. I had a character on that, but I kind of lost.
Want to go ahead and prop that up against?
Sure.
My daughters and I.
Because I'm isolated, there's no one for me to hang out with, so.
That's the thing about having 3 daughters is I can sit in my living room. We have a group of 4 people ready to go.
Yeah.
Whether you want to or not. I have
Yes,
4
yes,
daughters.
yeah.
Yeah?
Totally younger, but
Yeah, 2 teenagers and one 11-year-old and one.
Wow.
just click wait on it. See if it gets wait on that.
Okay, well,
Restart that one as well.
oh, come on, where's my,
I'm
So,
single and.
Mac, Windows, Linux,
What distro?
OpenSUSE. I've been happy for it. So it's more bloated than some others.
Yeah, but
I sense Brian very close.
no, I'm just trying to, I've lost the mouse on this. It's just the head, right?
And you can just tap the screen. It's a touch screen.
Oh, it's a touch screen. Okay.
let's see if this tablet.
So testing.
So where are we gonna look?
Well,
At each other?
yeah.
Okay.
The point is that
I like the delay. I turn my head back and forth. There's like a 1-second delay. I turn my head, and then my head turns.
So,
It's
We
like-
are easily amused.
Yeah, it doesn't
So
actually
actually,
dog chasing his tail.
We can't talk
as
to each
opposed
other.
to we are not amused.
We cannot talk to each other unless we give them a social. Call each other from across
So
the
we can
table.
look at
Right. Okay, well, so this is the January meeting,
2015.
2015, so
This
thank
is what
you,
our 4th year.
at least.
It's
been a whole year since
I mean, I've been doing longer than that, but
Of
as far
course.
as
Yeah, the restart
Yes.
was in about 2010, so yes, it'd be about 4.5 years, I would guess. So thanks, Hawk, for getting things started. And so today we have Dave with us and Richard, and
who's new.
so welcome, Dave, and Hawk and Richard, myself, Brian, and Christopher Stein's not able to be here, but hopefully we'll bring him in next time we meet. So, and welcome to all of our, if there are any offline, I should say online, not offline. Any other people who are listening, and welcome to our meeting. What do we want to cover?
Actually, I want to extend a thanks to Brian for a birthday present and makes me an actual official member.
Yay, we got 3. You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
You bet. Glad to do it.
We're slowly spreading.
We are.
Now there's at least 3 registered Tolkien Society members in Spokane.
So maybe what we need to do, Hawk, could you just kind of maybe give a synopsis or kind of a summary of kind of what the A Tolkien Society is here for? You know,
Okay.
for Dave's benefit, but also for remind everybody out there.
Audio's working pretty well on me. I'm hearing you, and I'm not hearing that, so that's good. Yes, so, and I'm the voice in the background here.
The gnome behind
So the main, and this is great because you were worried about joining us, afraid that we would not be happy with their level of knowledge of Tolkien. And it couldn't be further from the goal. We want new people who are curious about it for a couple of reasons. One is that's the point of this, is sharing and spreading the information and joy of Tolkien's works and Tolkien himself, and then all the related connections to it. You know, C.S. Lewis and George MacDonald and all these others who are connected. And you know, I even, you know, Brian, so I've been hosting Tolkien gaming conventions for years. And I've had friends who are far better Tolkien scholars than I will ever be. And that's because they make a living at it. They have published books like Michael Martinez and said, who just put out a new book, by the way, new ebook.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
And what? It's
yeah,
on.
I'll try to bring
we'll talk about that later.
Okay. So,
I heard the book.
so I'm much more an enthusiast than a scholar, but it is a scholarly endeavor, and I tie it in with all the role-playing gaming work as well.
It's pretty much.
And one of the benefits of people who just have passing curiosity is sometimes they ask the same questions, but in different ways. Other times they ask completely new questions we never thought of because we're so entrenched in what we're doing and we get our own versions of the things in our own little discussion group, and you become an echo chamber. And I've hosted a related mailing list, merp@merp.com, since '98. I took it over from Morrow and Butter. And that list is all but dead. Even though there's still 160 subscribers on it, and they're almost all authors of Tolkien-related gaming material. But we've all said everything to each other. We've asked what we thought were all the questions. Well, every now and then, I'll work on a new module and ask a question, and that'll pick up the conversation. So the wonderful thing about new people coming in is it reinvigorates the conversation. You, of course, learn new stuff, and we learn new stuff. So it's hugely beneficial. So all levels of interest are very much welcome. This is not a snooty little, we're the elite and we just want to, you're not worthy to join. Couldn't be further from the goal. So the main goal is just educating and entertaining, people about the joys of Tolkien's works.
Yeah, kind of sharing, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
it's totally sharing.
That's why it's great to have people come along and you got different background or whatever, because it makes it interesting and to ask people what their perspective is. So, thank you, Hawk. Well, I don't have any notes to share right now. We've kind of taken a little bit of a break, kind of a hiatus since the beginning of the fall. But in any case, we kind of know where we are. We've been reading through the letters actually of J.R.R. Tolkien, which kind of was helpful because it's like, well, what are we going to do? We'll get together every month. We'll meet. And
if you want to use my conference room next door, you can always do that.
Oh, well, thank you so
I
much.
only got a projection screen and it's free.
Awesome.
Thank
you, sir.
So much. Oh, that's really kind.
So anyway, the idea basically is that to kind of lend a little bit of a maybe structure that would be a little the same each month is that we read at least one, depends on how long they are. But the Tolkien was ridiculously productive in terms of like how much he wrote. We've got, like his son has boxes and boxes of stuff. The guy's been he's been gone for 40 years.
Yeah, and still.
And it just published in the last 5 years 2 of his books that had not been previously published. The Fall of Arthur, which was his attempt at a poem, an epic about King Arthur. And he was probably too dissatisfied with it's not quite good enough,
Yeah, you can see some of the roots from some of the ideas from Lord of the Rings buried in that.
Because it predates the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. And then also, just in the last year, his translation from Anglo-Saxon of.
Right there, I have both Seamus Heaney's and.
Very nice.
Oh.
Microphone.
Microphone
I
down.
reached up there. You can put it up there. Anyway, a Beowulf. So it's really cool. And Tolkien never gets old. That's our kind of
Quick
motto.
question for you. Did you have Beowulf in school?
No.
No, it wasn't required reading or anything?
No,
That's
I
interesting.
had
Now, where did
subject
you go to
research
school,
here.
for elementary, high school?
Spokane Valley.
Okay, that's interesting. So,
Maybe it'll rekindle some interest, you think?
I don't know. So, because I grew up, it was required reading. in elementary and high school. They had to read it again in high school at a different school.
But a lot of those
But I
classics
wonder
are
if
being
it's-
really read.
Yeah, the cohort effect.
My English teachers were big on Shakespeare.
That was in
I
Utah
hated
and
it.
California.
This
I
is
hated
the earlier translation.
Yeah, I didn't have any required reading for Shakespeare unless you took theater.
Of course, there was a movie.
But-
I think they made us watch.
But in the English classes, if you took honors or AP or advanced English classes in elementary or high school, it was required reading.
The most Beowulf exposure I have ever had
Yeah.
was from the Star Trek Next Generation episode about Beowulf.
What?
I don't.
I did not know there
I
was
own
such
all
a
the
thing.
episodes.
I've never heard
Wait,
of
do
that.
you know what year that was?
Yeah,
Episode.
believe it occurred on the holodeck.
Ooh. Okay, that's something we'll have to follow up on.
Which show was that? Deep Space Nine.
No, Next Generation.
Next gen.
Next Generation, and Data ends up being the one that saves the day.
Really?
Yeah,
I remember the Sherlock Holmes one they played.
Yeah.
it's
So
like
that was a recurring one. More.
some entity in the show was like pulling people into
Like Grendel's.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The character, that character in the storyline was like pulling members of the crew.
Oh, it was
into another
Voyager.
dimension.
It was Voyager. I think there is a Voyager episode called Beowulf.
Well, there's also
Harry Kim
Photon.
Really?
invaded by photonic life forms from nearby protostars.
Oh God,
He
Wasn't
played
that-
Beowulf on the holodeck,
Hold on.
I'm wrong, Dad.
played by Garrett White.
Cool. Close
Wow.
enough.
This is from.
But people
Memory
were-
Alpha.
So people were being pulled into the holodeck, or
No.
they went in for other purposes, and then they were.
I think it began with well, Harry Kim and it being his storyline, and then people went in to try to help figure out what the problem was because I think Harry didn't come out.
I do remember there was a
And they got sucked in, and then I
photonic.
don't claim to know much about Tolkien lore, but I would normally about Star Trek lore. And,
Yeah.
And
Maybe there were two different episodes.
wow, to say it was the Next Generation and have to be Voyager.
That's like.
That's like classic.
I mean, that's like what? Say it's
And
not so.
Off the top of my head, there's like 5 separate episodes where the ships are threatened by the holodeck, which means that's probably not the safest thing to install in your ship.
In the Next Generation, it's mostly Sherlock Holmes.
Right. Or the
There was
or
a
the 1930s kind of.
there was a film noir.
kind of stuff.
There was a film noir
Oh.
episode. Harry Kim also did some Captain Proton stuff that got out of hand.
Yeah.
That was
Well, we'll have to do some research. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I wasn't aware of any Star Trek Beowulf connection, but it's always possible. And that's the cool thing about fantasy and sci-fi is that there's many different connections. And I love the tropes because you have essentially a TV show, which is not necessarily mocking, but copying, another storyline, and those are always fun. I think.
Given how often the holodeck malfunctioned, it's surprising they didn't get a Flying Dutchman ship from the holographic
Right.
holographic malfunction.
Or just shut it down, right?
That thing is dangerous. Starfleet should not install it.
Yes, but then there wouldn't be as many episodes, would there?
But crew morale goes way down.
Yeah, that's true. It's a bouncing.
Yeah, but a ship is more expensive than replacing the computer.
So we're getting, what's up on the, have some technical difficulties? Right, there's a bit of lag.
Yeah, I can see that.
Wow, that's really weird. I feel like I'm in like.
No, there's a huge.
It's about a
Parallel-
second and a half of latency.
parallel-
And we're going over my cell phone as far as internet. At least that's not available.
Right.
So it's about a light second delay, so that would put it what, tomorrow?
Well,
Second and
no,
a
it'd
half,
be less than that.
186,000 miles per second.
Yeah. Well, you're past, the moon is 240,000. So the moon is 2 seconds.
So does anybody know what the area code in the moon is?
The sun is what, 91 million?
93 million. So
So
that's
that's
right.
8 light minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
Memory serves me correctly.
Which it is.
We're okay.
Okay, so that was basically just a little bit of an intro discussion, and so we also have been reading. I don't know if we have it with us today, but we've been kind of trying to learn some Elvish as well, just for fun. So we often start off with kind of an Elvish vocabulary word.
I forgot to bring the first edition.
So let's see if we can remember some of these things. So
Common hen.
so hen was what?
Uh,
I think.
Well, we already forgot.
head was the head of the hill, wasn't it?
Head was a different word.
Shoulder. See, I don't show that. See, shame on us. Well, because we haven't been practicing in months.
Clearly, we've not been brushing up on our Elvish.
Well, and we do have, of course, the latest issues of Amihan. Speaking of, Bulletin of the Tolkien Society. And that's monthly, and I believe this is quarterly, right?
Yeah, show both sides on that one.
There's Malord.
Almost kind of a comic book graphic novel version.
Oh, yeah. Comic. It's the Balrog.
Balrog on both sides.
So,
We had a brief reenactment of that today before we started.
So, do you want to just kind of talk about, see if there's anything up for discussion, and then
Well,
kind of
what-
launch into the letter? What do you want to
right,
do?
so one of our traditions that we do is, we usually have our notes from the previous meeting. That's been a while. And then we usually, cover a few topics, but then we jump into the letters of Tolkien. These are the actual letters that either he or his son wrote. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the book there, Brian. I have to fold that screen over. So we've been slowly progressing through numerically, not any particular order, other than just in the order they're presented in here, which is roughly chronologically. And we were what, around 90 or so?
We started in the 1920s, and we're almost at the end of World War II.
Wow.
So,
And it really has, I mean, the insights. have
I
been-
think we're at 160 or something.
Well, everyone's there, actually. All right, well, I can look it up here in the notes.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, then we do a little reading from it, and then we discuss it, and then that can trigger other topics. Again, we're kind of doing a reboot here, so things aren't quite as structured as they are once we're through. But let me take a look here. But yeah, so I want to mention about the, and there already is a link on the TolkienScholars.org website. Michael Martinez put a new ebook out.
Yes.
And so you'll see a link on the front page of TolkienScholars.org. A new book on Middle-earth is coming out. That was back in December. It is now available through Amazon as an ebook. And it's only $3, $2.99. 22,000 words long, so it's a short book.
And the title again?
Is
It has to do with the places.
it is Mindfaring Through Middle-earth.
There you go, Mindfaring.
And so the headline, the title, the description of it is, like most readers, you've probably wandered far and wide through the lands of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth in your own imagination. This experimental book takes you on a guided tour of Tolkien's world unlike any other you have experienced. Michael Martinez combines his famous conversational style with a keen eye for obscure details and connections to lead the reader on a journey of discovery in the most famous imaginarium of modern fantasy literature. You've never seen Middle-earth presented like this, and I think I know what he means. I haven't read it yet. I'm going to. I did put it on my wish list. And I'm going to see if it's still on Merck.com. So a bunch of his essays, this is not from his old essays, this is new material. But his old essays, he used to put out these different ones. And there was this one with the ranger and the elf and the stars in the sky that was very funny. And this would be a great example of his writing style he's mentioning. Here it is. An elf and a ranger were camping out in Eriador one night. As they lay in their blankets, the elf nudged the ranger and said, "Look up, my friend. Tell me what you see." "I see stars," replied the ranger. "A vast multitude of bright, shining stars." "And what does that tell you?" the elf asked. Sensing a deeper purpose behind the elf's question, the ranger gazed upward thoughtfully for a moment and said, "Well, I think it means that the universe is immense and that the Valar must have labored many ages before settling in Arda." The elf said quietly. The ranger decided he had not given the proper answer, so he cast his gaze westward and beheld the bright light of Eowyn's star. "And it also tells me that we are all part of a great tale, ever unfolding, adding layer of challenge and adventure upon layer," he added. I see, said the elf. And he said nothing more. But the ranger, realizing he had not guessed the elf's purpose, gave up and asked with great exasperation, "Well then, what does it tell you that we see the stars?" "It tells me," said the elf as he turned to his companion, "that someone has stolen our tent." And then he goes on to talk about Gildor and Gloria and wandering and elves from Providence. So that's the humor and approach that Michael was really great at putting out in his essays and stuff. So I suspect that might be kind of what he's talking about, the dialogue that he creates. And then he goes into detail. That's on Merck.com under Essays, Michael Martinez, and that is Where in the Wild is Gildor and Gloria? If those of you remember from the 80s, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? That's his little poke at that. So that would be, so on Amazon, you can find the book easily, Mind Faring Through Middle Earth. It became available December 22nd. And it's Kindle Unlimited, so you can view it through a web browser or anything else. You don't have to have a Kindle or an ebook reader, especially if you get it. It's only $2.99. So there you go, Michael. We gave you your little plug. And Michael has been, he and I had a podcast for years. We did over 50 episodes of Middle Earth Talk Radio. Every now and then we'll provide that. He also joins us during the convention periodically for webcast. And I think once or twice he's joined the Conference for Society off his schedule. And Michael's great. He's come to a number of conventions in person. And he's very, very entertaining. He's now in Georgia. He's moved a few times. So I encourage people to check it out. And then, by the way, just so you know, I'm actually in a couple of IRC chat rooms, in the OneRing.net, and then I'm on the Merck.com one, and then Geek Shed, and a few others free night in Tolkien-related channels. So every now and then, I try not to overly spam. I let people know, here it is, here's a link to the video, do you have any questions, and every now and then people repost stuff. Again, I expect to be pretty light this time around because we were on a hiatus. But if anybody's listening would like to ask questions or topics of discussion, please don't hesitate to let us know in the chat room. I haven't yet queued up the Facebook and Twitter feeds, but I'll have those up. They exist. I'm not logged in yet, but I will be. And so all these things I try to track. So I'm the facilitator. Yep. So back to letters. I was taking a look at our last notes.
Before we read that,
yes.
So I was wondering if this would be a good time to just briefly report on so the Battle of Five Armies in the movie.
Okay.
Well,
I haven't seen it, but I don't worry about it.
Well, I'm not going to give any spoilers away. I would just say that I've been kind of listening to a lot of the feedback, and then of course my oldest daughter and I, kind of have talked it through a little bit, and I read a few articles. So my own particular take on it is that so Jackson, he basically concluded his story. And he brought it to a satisfying kind of end for his kind of projection of what he wanted to say. But I think it left something lacking. I really think that even just hearing like one review on NPR, they have a movie review, kind of Siskel and Ebert kind of approach, and they were saying, his work on the Lord of the Rings, amazing. With this one, it was kind of the feeling of, when is this going to end? Oh, good. Relief. Not because The Hobbit is bad material, but because they felt like it was, butter scraped over too much film time, and so it was really that there was this sense in which, although there's a lot to admire in terms of the artwork, the cinematography, some really interesting and creative things that were done, I kind of came away from it feeling like kind of let down. Just that I wish that what I had seen was kind of a Hobbit movie that was closer to the book. But of course, the problem with that is, then if you're going to make it more lighthearted and more like a child's adventure with a few serious bits thrown in, a little bit of darkness but a lot more light, then it's going to be a lot harder for Jackson to tie it into his epic trilogy of the Lord of the Rings, which is really what he was trying to do, is to say, here's the backstory. And if you're going to do a backstory, he starts out light with the first movie, almost makes the goblins not scary enough, and then progressively gets more and more like that. Although I think the third movie was actually closer to the story than the second one. Are you? I think I would still recommend people seeing it. Will we own it? Yes, we'll buy it. Of course, we'll buy it.
Right.
It's not as bad as when Walden did Prince Caspian. I felt like totally butchered the Narnia story.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed. But so it's not that bad of a failure. But it's just kind of one of these things where
Let down.
amazing movie. Wow.
Didn't Prince
They got
Caspian-
Thorin right, but that's about all I'm going to say.
Didn't Prince Caspian suffer from the heavy hand of Disney?
You know, Disney was involved in that one, and then they dropped it after that movie bombed. I don't know that it was the heavy hand of Disney. My feeling on it was that Andrew Adamson, who was the director, and the team, the creative team that he had involved in screenwriting, I think it's very dangerous when you're trying to take something that's beloved and well written, and you want to kind of put your own flavor to it because that's what directors do. You know, it's not their fault. But if you put one foot on the story, well, I mean, then you might as well not make movies based on books, which is one possibility.
That's the issue I have with Hollywood, is they can't come up with their own ideas. They have to go and steal somebody else's, put their own spin on it, and then they wonder why it bombs.
Yeah. Well, that's a good
Sorry,
question.
it's a pet peeve.
The whole idea, again, of that people tend to be more interested in movies that are based on books. Even The Divergent, I think the stories have been based on.
It drives viewers to the theater.
I think it does. So that's a whole other topic. But I just meant to say that I think what happened is one foot on the story, then he took one foot off and placed it like over here. Like, what if? But then I think he lifted this other foot and used this as his kind of basis, kind of like, okay, this is the Middle Earth I'm imagining when I go further away. And so I think I really respect, again, the work, the attempt. The effort. But I would give it a C plus for the whole thing. Go ahead, Richard.
Part of the problem that I think the Hollywood directors have is that some of these movies, like Lord of the Rings and the Narnia series, are based on biblical concepts and ideas, and the Hollywood directors want to go away from that, and then because they're departing from the material, it doesn't come out as the same story, and so they're promoting their worldview, which is completely different from what the authors had when they were writing the stories, and that's why they don't mesh up.
Well, I think any attempt to try to render an imaginative world needs to definitely, whatever you change or do, you have to really take into account the world.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the Christian principles that the authors had are so intrinsic to the story that when you try to take that out, it destroys the story.
That's what I was saying, though. I was agreeing with you that I think that you need to take into account whatever the worldview of the author is. Certainly, again, the fact that you change some things is we don't want to be such a purist that you can't do anything. And then there's a few books that have actually been rendered better when it's brought to the big screen. I think there's a few things that the Hobbit books did really well. I mean, the Hobbit movies. I think they rendered Lonely Mountain, I thought, very well. Just the mountain itself.
At our house, in relation to the Hobbit, we've talked about a little bit of disappointment as far as the deviation from the book.
Yeah.
And then another theme that we've talked about recurringly is how much revenue can you milk from one small book,
Okay.
right? It's like in an effort
But I
to
disagree with the small.
yeah, well, yeah, right.
I think, three movies could still have been done without Jackson doing what he did. Without video gameizing it and making it an action.
But it certainly
It
is.
could have been more of a story film.
When we say small in
Relatively
relation to that
more
conversation, that's it.
Yeah.
But you
We're
know,
comparing it to the trilogy. And it's such
Which should have
a
been 6
small
movies.
body of work
Or 9
compared to the
movies.
trilogy.
Yeah,
And you
spinning
look
it,
at the three
spinning it into a trilogy.
And then
Certainly the
also
motivations.
trying to get out
Yeah.
of the Hobbit.
especially if you look at one thing, and that is the argument over 2 or 3 movies. And I was always a 3-movie supporter from the beginning, only because there's never too many,
Right.
which is kind of what
Depends
you're
on
on.
how you do it.
I know,
Right.
but I think in today's climate, why was that decision made to go to 3?
Right.
And it was money.
That's what it really seems like to us. And not that it couldn't have been a great thing for you,
Or
it's just
some-
that there's that, that you can
Exactly.
just smell the monetary
You could
pull.
smell it, yeah.
Orson Scott Card's Ender Game made into
I
a
love that movie.
The problem I have with that is that Orson Scott
Orson Scott Card.
A card by any other name would smell sweet.
Stop it!
Would that be a P card?
Mr. Card had a executive producer credit on that, and I can see his heavy hand of including everything that was in the book into the movie. And the problem with that that I can see is that it made it so that the director cannot spend any time on characterization, and he just had to rush through the whole thing because the content of the book is greater than the content of time that you have to get across the
I
movie.
wonder if it was a closer adherence to the book is one of the reasons why.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Is he was trying to stick to the book.
This is when I saw the movie and didn't read the book, so I have no.
I was pleasantly
Book
surprised
is
by the movie.
very good. Yeah, Card is a great writer. But that's a good point, Richard. Well, we don't know. But Tolkien did say at one point that he was just starting this, and that other minds and other hands needed to take it further. He probably regretted that statement, but I think.
I know Christopher does.
So, in reference, because you're new here, and for those who are new online, if you're not already aware, we have used to be quarterly, but a semi-regular magazine called Other Minds Magazine, which is related to the quote that Tolkien sent, for other hands and minds to build upon art and theater, etc. So, and now Thomas Lewinsky in Germany has helped continue that. I got it started way back a little bit. Professor Chris Seaman, who worked for Iron Enterprises during the Middle-earth role-playing era, was an editor there, and then created Other Hands magazine, also based on the same quote. And that ran from 92 to 2001, right around there. And then he just continued that. So then I kind of picked up the torch with Other Minds magazine in 2005 or so, and started putting out issues, and then Thomas has kept it going. So there's 14 issues now, just tons and tons of information. I disagree with how I did the last issue. It's a mammoth issue. It's 300 something pages of content. We could have had 2 or 3 years of regular releases with him putting everything into one issue.
He wants to write a book.
Well, he's not the one writing it. It's contributors. He has his own articles, but it's articles from many different people from a role-playing gamer's perspective to try to explain things, because it creates that extension of the world. But a lot of it is very scholarly too. A lot of it doesn't even really, even though they may be gamers, they're not doing anything related to gaming specifically. It's just useful to the Tolkien-based gamers. We're talking about tabletop role-playing games. So you mentioned Other Hands and Minds. I want to throw in Other Minds magazine, and there's a Facebook page, and then of course there's othermindsmagazine.com or omz.org. And it's free, downloadable PDF for anybody that's interested. And we're always looking for contributions to that as well. And the artwork from Tim Powers, I don't know, we've had artwork authorized from major artists of Tolkien style. So I decided to throw that in there.
Thanks, that's good.
Since you mentioned it again, since it's kind of a reboot.
And Hawk wrote a really good article in there that I read about trees, about the role of nature.
Tolkien and his love of trees and nature.
So it's kind of similar to some of the stuff we see in the Tolkien Society. But anyway, if you give me your email, I'll email you the notes from this, and then I'll link to
the website.
Yeah, right, the website, and then you can get the update on the next.
Put them on the mailing list too.
So did you guys? June is last time there's notes, but you guys clearly met after August.
We did.
We were in August.
Yep.
No notes from that. Did you read 91? Because it was 90 was the last one you had.
I'd have to look at it to see. I don't
Okay,
think
well,
we got quite that far.
It was kind of a long one.
Got lost in the discussion.
You bet it right there.
Yeah.
I think we
See
just
where
got
we want to
lost in the
resume
discussion.
from.
That was a while back.
Okay. The next one after that mentions C.S. Lewis briefly, which he does frequently in his letters. They were good friends
I think
for a long time.
Yeah. I think we are on 91. I think that's a good call.
Okay.
So let's just pick it up from there.
Would you like me to read?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
And this This is nice because it actually, he mentions that he's in the middle of writing the Lord of the Rings. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, this is a little snapshot of history. That's why we like doing this. It's just get inside his mind and what was going on. And it humanizes him. He's a person. He's not some epic person or something.
I mean, you need to break it up for
family.
discussion in the middle, or just wait till the end for discussing this letter?
Make notes of things you want to discuss. It's long. So, letter 91 to Christopher Tolkien, 29th of November, 1944, 20 Northmore Road, Oxford. So that's where he was at the time. My dearest, here is a small consignment of The Ring, the last 2 chapters that have been written, and the end of the 4th book of that great romance, in which you will see that, as is all too easy, I have got the hero into such a fix that not even an author will be able to extricate him without labor and difficulty. Lewis was moved almost to tears by the last chapter. All the same, I chiefly want to hear what you think, as for a long time now I have written with you most of mine. I see from my register that I sent 3 chapters off on October 14th and another 2 on October 25th. Those must have been Herbs and Stewed Rabbit, Faramir, and the Forbidden Pool, and Journey to the Crossroads and the Stairs of Cirith Ungol. Interesting spells Cirith here with K instead of a C, which later
Isn't it, is it
it's pronounced Cirith Ungol, but he later changes that to a
He
C.
uses the, yeah.
The first lot should have reached you by now, I hope about your birthday. The second should come soon, and I hope this lot will get to you early in the new year. I eagerly await your verdict. Very trying having your 1,000 miles away, on or off the walloping window blind. Walloping window blind? This is while during World War II, so it's
that Morris cover?
Do you know what the walloping window blind is?
What was the phrase right before that?
I eagerly await your, very trying having your chief audience 10,000 miles away, on or off the walloping window blind.
Oh, he's describing an airplane and I think meaning whether the sun, because the sun was in the Royal Air Force, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So a window blind, so a very flimsy thing. Well, I'm thinking maybe he means that whether his sun is in the air or not. I'm not sure about that. It's just my guess. Walloping is kind of like going up and down, and window blind would do something very shaky, very thin. So maybe it's kind of making a joke about the aircraft.
I was thinking about the Morse code slat things that
Could be.
ships use to communicate with.
Could be.
That doesn't really make much sense.
He
to
says
me.
on or off. I'm not sure. That is a thing. We're talking about people, 70 years ago, and it's another thing. It's British, so.
Artemir says the audio quality is better, but the echo still makes it challenging.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been saying is that I have a
You gotta
problem
hold a nice
reading his
microphone.
letters because
You want us
he
to
wrote
hold
them
it
in
closer?
English and I speak them.
No, it won't. I just need to get enough clip-on wireless ones and have a little.
I have one if you want.
We'll talk. I mean, bring them to the meetings and then
Oh, I did
I'll
bring one.
contribute. The clip-on?
Yeah,
Yeah, the headset.
The
Yeah,
earphones.
right, yeah.
they're
Well, maybe next time we can try to set that up. So anyway, window locking. Even more trying for the audience, doubtless, but qua authors, are a hopelessly egotist tribe. Book 5 and last opens with the ride of Gandalf to Minas Tirith, with which the Palantir, last chapter of Book 3, closed. Some of this is written or sketched. Then should follow the raising of the siege of Minas Tirith by the onset of the riders of Rohan, in which King Theoden falls, the driving back of the enemy by Gandalf and Aragorn to the Black Gate, the parley in which Sauron shows various tokens, such as the mithril coat, to prove that he has captured Frodo, but Gandalf refuses to treat, a horrible dilemma all the same, even for a wizard. Then we shift back to Frodo and his rescue by Sam. From a high place they see all Sauron's vast reserves loosed through the Black Gate, and then hurry on to Mount Doom through deserted Mordor. With the destruction of the ring, the exact manner of which is not certain, all these last bits were written ages ago, but no longer fit in detail nor in elevation, for the whole thing has become much larger and loftier. Beredur crashes, and the forces of Gandalf sweep into Mordor. Frodo and Sam fighting with the last Nazgul on an island of rocks surrounded by the fire of the erupting Mount Doom are rescued by Gandalf's evil.
Did this fighting with an asshole?
Yeah.
Frodo and Sam fighting with the last Nazgul on an island of rocks surrounded by the fire of the erupting Mount Doom.
I don't remember that in this.
How about in the book?
And again, remember, he says these are all ideas he has, but he hasn't really solidified it.
Apparently, that's not
Are rescued by Gandalf's evil, and then the clearing up of all loose threads, down even to Bill Ferny's pony, must take place. Love that keeps that in mind.
Billy Pony.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of this work will be done in a final chapter where Sam is found reading out of an enormous book to his children and answering all of their questions about what happened to everyone. That will link up with his discourse on the nature of stories in the stairs of Cirith Ungol. Wait a minute, I think I jumped. That will link up with his discourse on the nature of stories in the stairs of Cirith Ungol. Oh, when he's sitting there talking to Frodo about being in the story. Okay. But the final scene will be the passage of Bilbo and Elrond and Galadriel through the woods of the Shire on their way to the Grey Havens. Frodo will join them and pass over the sea, linking with the vision he had of a far green country in the house of Tom Bombadil. So ends the Middle Age, and the dominion of men begins, and Aragorn, far away on the throne of Gondor, labors to bring some order and to preserve some memory of old among the welter of men that Sauron has poured into the West. But Elrond has gone, and all the High Elves. What happens to the Ents, I don't know yet. I don't yet know. It will probably work out very differently from this plan when it really gets written, as the thing seems to write itself once I get going, as if the truth comes out then, only imperfectly glimpsed in the preliminary sketch.
Ooh.
All the love of your own father.
Could you read that last sentence about the preliminary sketch part?
It will probably work out very differently from this plan when it really gets written, as the thing seems to write itself once I get going, as if the truth comes out then, only imperfectly glimpsed in the preliminary sketch.
Any comment on the letter? Anything that jumped out at you, Dave?
stuff.
Interesting bits that might not have gotten in the final.
And yet, how much, most of that was the same.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, because in earlier letters, because he started writing and then stopped and started again like 3 times.
Wow.
And so he radically changed things from the very first time.
What jumps out to me is
13 years.
is the process he goes through, and that gotten special insight because I'm actually trying to write a book, and the way I'm writing it, there's some similarities, some distinct mentions in his letters.
I like the last part that you read about how at some point, when it finally comes out, it just pours forward.
Yeah.
As though it were almost about me.
Yeah, the muses have it.
Right, you know, and there's, and I love that concept, not just in relation to this work, but in relation to any endeavor that one is passionate about, when they can make that connection,
Yeah.
and it just flows.
Yeah.
I kind of had that sensation this last week where I wrote down a section and kind of spaced out of it as I'm writing it, and then I look at it and go, oh, okay.
Well, that's the great thing about writing is that to express, the Latin means to press out as if you're treading grapes. You're pressing out, as if you're pressing out grape juice or wine, what will become wine. And this idea that you don't really know fully what you're writing until it's pressed out. Yeah.
And I think there's I like to think about the concept there of at some point, you think about what you want to do, and that's like such an assertion of the conscious mind into the endeavor. And at some point, the conscious mind steps out of the way and allows the true creativity to come forth.
That's an interesting point.
That brings up 2 things. So one, I studied martial arts on and off since I was 4 years old, 1974. And another part is related to where I'm now studying with recreation therapy, music therapy, etc. So on the martial arts side, one of the things I struggle with when I get older, not when I was younger, so martial arts when I was 4, during my peak I was going 6 days a week, 8 hours a day. intensive training in Tolkien. And but then I didn't go for a while, and I came back, and I kept training on my own and kept practicing, but I wasn't getting new training for a while. And I came back in my later teens, and though I was, faster, stronger, more balanced, had better reflexes and spatial awareness because my growing had slowed down. So I'm 6'7", and I was growing so fast when I was little. I thought my fingertips were here, not here. So as I came back in my late teens, everything was kind of catching up, and that mapping, the brain maps your universe, was more accurate. All of that was better, and yet I was less effective because I was thinking through everything I needed to do with my forms and responses to sparring and everything else. I was perfectly good at the defensive, but when I was supposed to go more offensive, I was calculating so much that I became ineffective with sparring my super. So my super had to take me aside for a few days and really work on letting go and just letting me just be in the moment until it happened and not overthink things.
Same concept.
Yeah, and it would happen with breaking boards and stuff like that, it's overthinking it. And then jumping forward to recreation therapy, welcome.
Hi.
Recreation, especially, but it overlaps in recreation therapy, has the whole concept of flow. And I forget exactly who the author is who came up with that concept. But the flow state is the ideal state for an activity where you have a loss of time, where the challenge level is just enough that you feel challenged enough that your full focus is engaged, but not so challenged that you're overwhelmed with stress. Nor is it so easy that it becomes boring or that you're distracted by other thoughts and start looking around the clock. It's that in-between ideal state, the state of flow. And it's a really powerful state. And we've experienced it with role-playing game sessions where in the moment of the session, we're playing, it feels like half an hour went by, and a little bit 2 hours have gone by. And
That kind of zen stuff.
it's being in the moment. And same thing with the writing. I've experienced it with writing the modules and such, where we start out, we pick a theme for each year's convention campaign usually. And so we have, to quote Steve Marcotti, beginning with the end in mind. We have an end goal of where we want to be. And we have kind of a starting point, but we don't know any of the details in between. And that has to happen as we progress. We do some research, we do some dialogue. I'll start writing out.
Is that giant, seeing some giant hunter crashing down the steps as we're trying to escape.
That was great. That was
one of the
2 years ago. Tolkien moved here before last. Yeah, that was so funny. It was an adventure to rescue one of the seeing stone of Weathertop before it was destroyed. As the battle to destroy it.
In a time earlier.
They were
How
involved.
big was this concept?
Because we found information. Well, they were different sizes, and it was a huge one. The
So that's where
Weathertop
Hawk did
stone was
research and
huge.
realized
So
that.
that was the 40
Something like that, yeah. So
It could kill
the
you.
different stones came in different sizes, and the Weathertop version was one of the most powerful ones. And as the forces remain marked, starts very close. But I didn't know this when I started the adventure. It was I came across a thing saying rescue, the Palantir was moved over. I didn't have any of the details. I went, oh, that's not like a good adventure idea. It doesn't say who rescued it. It just says it was rescued before it fell. That sounds like a good campaign idea. So then delve into it. Next thing I found, so I'm making ideas, I have plots and plans and how to get there. And then I come across this thing, oh, it was huge. It was a gentleman. That's going to totally change the dynamics of how they get this out of here. Because before, like when they pocketed the one from Orthanc, that Sauron stone, it was only bowling ball size. Okay, you can carry that around. This thing was massive. How do you get this? It was on top of a tower.
Yeah,
How do
we
you get it
should
down to a wagon
Should just let the Witch King have it.
where all the enemy is surrounding the tower?
Let him move it.
I'm
So they
sorry,
rolled
it's
it down
a
the
built-in.
spirals there. Anyway, so in the moment, all those things
They built the
happen.
tower around.
And whether it's divine inspiration or stepping outside of your own way and letting yourself be in the moment, whether it's that state of flow, you find just the right balance, they're all different expressions of a similar approach of just being that way.
I love the term flow.
Yeah, it's a great term. I love it.
One of my favorites.
Yes, right. Yeah.
You said there's a second thing that you thought of? Is that kind of
Well, so there's a martial arts one and then the recreation therapy flow.
right?
Because the martial arts one was get out of the way, quit thinking, and just be, which is a more Buddhist thing.
Get out of your own way, flow. And another concept I heard is allowing more of yourself to flow.
Yeah, your full self, full potential.
Well, and full engagement is, I think, where fantasy is at its best. I mean, I think other genres are good, but I think that fantasy, in a certain way, does that better than other genres.
As Tolkien said in his speech on Monsters and Critics. In fact, do I have a copy?
I think you do.
Where is it? Yeah, see if I can find that quote. Do you want to read the next letter, or do you have any more comments from that letter?
What about that Nazgul thing?
Oh yeah, I fought the Nazgul. Oh, that thing's right battered up, surrounded by lava. Here comes one of the.
So clearly,
The last Nazgul.
but you know what's interesting is that the last Nazgul, is it talking about the Witch King or not?
Doesn't
Could
say.
he have been originally thinking that it would be killed by a halfling at Mount Doom and not on the fields in front of Minas Tirith?
I don't know. That's a good question.
And then, of course, later on, he's like, I know. No, not at Mount Doom. We'll have it here.
Okay.
And it'll be Eowyn. I think Eowyn changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to read next?
Sure.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say on that? Isn't that neat though? These letters
Yeah.
just like, oh, I had no idea.
It's a short one.
And it's approachable for anybody. You don't have to be a scholar or this literary elite to get it. This is a human being talking about the process and then sharing with his son.
Well, that's what I like.
Yeah,
He's,
it's so neat.
hey, it's Dad again.
Yeah,
I'm writing the story.
exactly.
What do you think I should do here?
So humanized. We were talking about earlier the humanization.
Maybe
process.
we don't have the other half always, do we?
No.
Maybe
you can
Christopher's
only
like, Dad, that's a terrible idea. Fighting the past Nazgul
Yeah.
out, dude. What are you thinking?
What's his responses?
There is one criticism like that is recorded.
What's
where
that?
He's talking about he's characterizing the Hobbit door as blue, and then his son says, "But Dad, you said it was green."
Yes. Darn it.
Oh, and the Monsters and Critics quote is in response to Beowulf, which is because of Tolkien that Beowulf is mainstream.
Right.
Before that, it was just, as he said, on the dusty shelves of some archivist room.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nobody, and they would be looked at from an anthropological and archaeological perspective, not as a work of art.
Right.
And so he was arguing, no, this should be appreciated as a work of art. If you tear it apart down into its components, you lose the overall piece. And that's what his Monsters and Critics.
And yet he wasn't a romanticist, which is
No, he-
interesting because
Yeah.
the romantic writers would have said that too. Anyway, okay, letter 92.
Great.
From a letter to Christopher Tolkien, 18th of December, 1944. Your news of yourself does not in some ways add to my equanimity. A dangerous trade, but may God keep you, dear boy. But as you seem to be enjoying part of it more than anything up to now, I take comfort in that. I should feel happier if your time was better organized, so that you could get reasonable rest. Training by straining seems irrational, but I fear an Air Force is a fundamentally irrational thing per se. I could wish dearly that you had nothing to do with anything so monstrous. It is in fact a sore trial to me that any son of mine should serve this modern Molech. But such wishes are vain, and it is, I clearly understand, your duty to do, as well as in such service as you have the strength and aptitude to do. In any case, it is only a kind of squeamishness, perhaps, like a man who enjoys steak and kidney, or did, but would not be connected with the butchery business. As long as war is fought with such weapons, and one accepts any profits that may accrue, such as preservation of one's skin and even victory, quote, it is merely shirking the issue to hold war aircraft in special horror. I do so all the same. This morning, I saw C.S. Lewis for a while. His fourth or fifth novel is brewing, and seems likely to clash with mine, my dimly projected third. I have been getting a lot of new ideas about prehistory lately, via Beowulf and some other sources of which I may have written, and want to work with them into the long-shelved time travel story I began. C.S. Lewis is planning a story about the descendants of Seth and Cain. We also begin to consider writing a book in collaboration on language, its nature, origins, and functions. There were time for all these projects. End of letter. So we need to read the footnotes on this. Yeah, never finished it. It's in Unfinished Tales.
Oh,
It's Lost Road.
Oh, Lost Road.
second from the top.
There you go.
So,
That's a pretty big book for an unfinished work.
so I think actually the reference to using fantasy as a mode I think it's actually on fairy stories.
Yes.
And that's
Which is his more full treatment, yeah.
Yeah, which when we finish discussing that later, maybe share a snippet.
Yeah, please, actually, let me just quick pull up,
Why he thought using
I'm
fantasy
trying to remember
to
why.
teach and stuff like that was more effective than straight nonfiction or something.
I think these are organized by the page numbers, not the letters, is that correct?
Wouldn't that be because it allows you to pull out of the
Well,
culture?
letter.
We'll stay focused on this letter for the moment. But
Okay,
Sorry, you kind of asked.
no, I know. Well, I was just throwing it out there.
okay, hold on just a second. And so let me, here is the, so in letter 92, his first footnote had to do with Lewis writing a story that may clash with mine, and that's referring to Lewis's next published novel after That Hideous Strength and The Great Divorce was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which doesn't connect with what Tolkien's saying. Tolkien is, however, almost certainly referring to some other book of Lewis's that was never completed. You might remember that in Lewis's science fiction trilogy, he does refer to the Eldil, the angels and such,
Right.
these ideas of planetary beings that kind of guard, the guardians of the planets, guardians of the galaxy almost. But in actual fact, he was borrowing some language from Tolkien. So, anyway, welcome. Hey, I'm Brian. This is Richard. This is Hawk.
Tell me what you just said.
I bet they write better keyboard than I do.
Ah, nice.
She's the one that translates.
Actually,
Nice.
my daughter writes 10-4, I don't.
When I was in 8th or 9th grade, my shoes I had written all over and alternated between Elvish and very fast
The Dwarvish runes.
So
Nice.
one shoe was Elvish.
Wow.
Did you feel a little
Well, I don't remember any.
schizophrenic here? But yeah.
I was really into it.
Anyway, and the second thing, oh yeah, so Tolkien's dimly projected third story may have been the Notion Club Papers, which is what is in here.
Hmm.
And it's this time travel story, which
Right.
you really should have a look at. It's really
Yeah.
interesting. He never finishes it, but it's this idea of people going back in time via the father and son having names that are an echo of a father and son in. Yeah, it's really an interesting idea.
Doesn't
He
it
never
tie
finished
into
it.
Numenor and everything?
It does.
Battleships
It's
and all
really
this
where he
stuff,
first
yeah.
actually writes about
Yeah.
Numenor.
Yeah.
Second,
It's where the Dunedain came from. Right.
the Rangers. Okay. Let's see. Second footnote. Lewis told Chad Walsh,
Of the Dunedain.
who visited him in the summer of 1948, that this book was to be called Language and Human Nature and was to be published the following year by the Student Christian Movement Press, but this never happened. And basically, this book they were going to collaborate on did not happen.
Oh.
Some people speculate it's because of Lewis's growing friendship with Charles Williams,
Mhm.
which meant he wasn't hanging around with Tolkien quite as much, and they didn't produce it, which is really a sad thing because
Yeah.
both Tolkien and Lewis writing about the nature of language, the origin of it, and how it works. I mean, that would have been awesome. But I think there's notes on that in unpublished stuff. Anyway, so that's it on that.
Do you have any comment on that? So you were referencing about how maybe fantasy as a genre is potentially more powerful or effective mode of writing for expressing of ideas or immersion or something to that effect. So you or Brian, then you were both discussing that. It was fine.
I think it's true.
I was kind of saying that isn't it easier to pull yourself out of the lens of the society that you live in and actually look at preconceptions that we take for granted that never really consider.
Right. Yeah, Lewis had a term for that. He said, we're all guilty of chronological snobbery. We tend to think that our generation has it together in a way that nobody else ever did. And so while we may have certain things better than our predecessors, the truth is that people in the past may have understood some things better than we do. We're blind to it because, well, you know, we're materialistic or we've got our own issues or whatever. So you can actually read older books. And I don't know if that's why like Jane Austen is so popular nowadays or other writers from previous time period. I don't know. That's an interesting question. So, we want to read the next letter, or
Well,
any other
so I was
comments?
going to comment because from the On Fairy Stories reference, because this is something we've talked about many times, we've never actually read the excerpt. So there's his kind of his prologue to it, and then kind of his epilogue. So I'll just read the shorter one. So this is his essay on fairy stories. This is in The Monsters and the Critics and Other Essays. Monsters and the Critics was his lengthy piece. It's about 45 pages long about why Beowulf should be considered as a work of art and a poem and looked at from that perspective. Then on fairy stories is why fantasy, anyway, he explained himself. I propose to speak about fairy stories, though I am aware that this is a rash adventure. Fairy is a perilous land, and in it are pitfalls for the unwary and dungeons for the overbold. And overbold I may be accounted, for though I have been a lover of fairy stories since I learned to read, and have at times thought about them, I have not studied them professionally. I have been hardly more than a wandering explorer or trespasser in the land, full of wonder but not of information. The realm of fairy story is wide and deep and high, and filled with many things. All manner of beasts and birds are found there. Shoreless seas and stars uncounted. Beauty that is an enchantment and an ever-present peril. Both joy and sorrow as sharp as swords. In that realm a man may, perhaps, count himself fortunate to have wandered. But its very richness and strangeness tie the tongue of a traveler who would report them. And while he is there, it is dangerous for him to ask too many questions, lest the gates should be shut and the keys be lost. There are, however, some questions that one who is to speak about fairy stories must expect to answer, or attempt to answer, whatever the folk of fairy may think of as impertinence. For instance, what are fairy stories? What is their origin? What is the use of them? I will try to give answers to these questions, or such hints of answers to them as I have gleaned, primarily from the stories themselves, the few of all their multitude that I know. And just the way he phrases that opening, you can imagine when giving that lecture, how distinctive that would be from so many others.
We just don't understand very easily what it was like back then when adults wouldn't have publicly admitted that they read.
Yeah, no, that
Fantasy or fairy stories, and we take it for granted that it has a legitimate kind of following now, and people they might say, well, I'm not into that, but they wouldn't mock you. But in his day, they would.
Yeah.
And I think he really
Took a chance.
it's because of Tolkien and people like him that kind of said, this isn't just something for kids, but it's something beautiful beyond us that it's worth really.
Well, I'd use the Lord of the Rings series as kind of the start of the fantasy genre.
Did you have any comments you wanted to make?
What's your Carolyn? What were you translating?
The translating, I was mostly looking at it in Doctor Who quotes.
Doctor Who to Elvis.
Nice, my daughter would approve.
Cool. Yeah.
Sorry,
So-
it's off topic.
So
That's okay. No, it's
For
it's
example-
not because they're all you'd be surprised the connections.
I
It's okay.
read book heads and cool, and I wrote it out and figured out the best layout of the letters and different like
Nice,
so
nice.
so best.
Nice. What do I call it?
So
Exterminate.
that was the
Can I
intro
write that,
to
Mark?
his essay, which then goes on for about another 30 pages.
Yeah.
Here's the epilogue, because this is where we've seen him mention this in his letters a number of times, and we see a number of analysts talking about Tolkien mention this. This joy, which I have selected as the mark of the true fairy story or romance, or as the seal upon it, merits more consideration. Probably every writer making a secondary world, a fantasy, every sub-creator, wishes in some measure to be a real maker, or hopes that he is drawing on reality. Hopes that the peculiar quality of this secondary world, if not all the details, are derived from reality with a capital R, or are flowing into it. If he indeed achieves a quality that can fairly be described by the dictionary definition, quote, inner consistency of reality, end quote, it is difficult to conceive how this can be if the work does not in some way partake of reality. The peculiar quality of the joy in successful fantasy, with capital F, can thus be explained as a sudden glimpse of the underlying reality or truth. It is not only a consolation for the sorrow of this world, but a satisfaction and an answer to that question, quote, is it true? End quote. The answer to this question that I gave at first was, quite rightly, quote, if you have built your little world well, yes, it is true in that world, end quote. That is enough for the artist or the artist part of the artist. But in the Eucatastrophe, we see in a brief vision the answer may be greater. It may be a far-off gleam or echo of evangelism in the real world. The use of this word gives a hint of my epilogue. It is a serious and dangerous matter. It is presumptuous of me to touch upon such a theme. But if by grace what I say has in any respect any validity, it is, of course, only one facet of truth incalculably rich. Finite only because the capacity of man for whom this was done is finite. I would venture to say that approaching the Christian story from this direction, it has long been my feeling, a joyous feeling, that God redeemed the corrupt making creatures, men in a way fitting to this aspect as to others of their strange nature. The Gospels contain a fairy story, or a story of a larger kind which embraces all the essence of fairy stories. They contain many marvels, peculiarly artistic, beautiful, and moving, mythical in their perfect self-contained significance, and among the marvels is the greatest and most complete conceivable catastrophe. But this story has entered history and the primary world. The desire and aspiration of subcreation has been raised to the fulfillment of creation. Birth of Christ is the eucatastrophe of men's history. Resurrection is the eucatastrophe of the story of the incarnation. This just keep say the word eucatastrophe. This story begins and ends in joy. It has preeminently the inner consistency of reality. There's no tale ever told that men would rather find as true, and none which so many skeptical men have accepted as true on its own merits. For the art of it has the supremely convincing tone of primary art as creation. To reject it leads either to sadness or to wrath. It is not difficult to imagine the peculiar excitement and joy that one would feel if any specially beautiful fairy story were found to be primarily true, its narrative to be history, without thereby necessarily losing the mythical or allegorical significance that it possessed. It is not difficult, for one is not called upon to try and conceive anything of a quality unknown. The joy would have exactly the same quality, if not the same degree, as the joy which the turn in a fairy story gives. Such joy has the very taste of primary truth. Otherwise, its name would not be joy. It looks forward or backward. The direction in this regard is unimportant to the great catastrophe. The Christian joy, the Gloria, is of the same kind, but it is preeminently infinitely in our capacity, if our capacity were not finite, high and joyous. Because this story is supreme and is true, art has been verified. God is Lord of angels and men and of elves. And of elves, he throws in. Legend and history have met and fused. But in God's kingdom, the presence of the greatest does not depress the small. Redeemed man is still man. Story fantasy still goes on and should go on. The Evangelium has not abrogated legends. It has hallowed them, especially the happy ending. The Christian has still to work, with mind as well as body, to suffer, hope, and die. But he may now perceive that all his bents and faculties have a purpose, which can be redeemed. So great is the bounty with which he has been treated that he may now perhaps fairly dare to guess that in fantasy, in capital F, he may actually assist in the affiliation and multiple enrichment of creation. All tales may come true, and yet at the last redeemed, they may be as like and as unlike the forms that we give them as man. Finally redeemed will be like and unlike the fallen man.
Like Tom Bombadil. It's like there's that sense in which you feel like there's something in that, and you just think, yeah, amen. Well, Tolkien says it really well.
Thoughts? I mean, that's a lot.
There's a lot there.
2 pages.
You have thoughts? Yes, you, not me.
Got my last part of that back to sneeze.
Me too.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was like something.
My allergy protected my.
Yeah, something you could You said it like 6 times.
Is there some hidden meaning there?
No, it's really. I mean, think about what he was taking on in this time period, it was what, in the 30s or so.
Realism.
I forget what he exactly did that. But that was some pretty radical stuff to try, because on the one hand, he's talking about how and he was very devout Catholic and such, and so on the one hand, he totally believes in his faith, and on the other hand, he admits that, there's definitely fairy story to this, and that wasn't, for him, in his mind, a conflict. Whereas if you make fantasy can't be reality, then it creates a conflict, and then that becomes a problem, but then it also creates a problem with explaining a lot of what his faith is based on. And then tying that into the power of each sub-creator's validity and the value of their sub-creation, and how it all ties back into whatever this reality is.
What level of ridicule did you see?
What's that?
What level of ridicule did you see?
It was, they're very drawn-in people, it seems. So it wasn't it doesn't seem like it was overly loud ridicule, but there was a little bit of a standout, oh, he's that fantasy guy. Oh, he writes the child stories. Remember when he was doing the Hobbit?
Although
he
Lewis got it
ashamed.
worse than Tolkien.
Yes, because he had more popularity and such. But on campus, in some of the letters, he talked about kind of being hesitant to mention anybody who's writing Hobbit when he was writing that. He was very hesitant about which circles he would discuss that. And then eventually he seemed to overcome that and as he had some success in that area, he became a little more source about it. But definitely imagine the less literary of his professors, his peers, scoffing at that. So they can't see reality being interconnected. But have we ever come across any snippets of newspapers or clippings or anything? That's things, he wasn't as out and pressed the way C.S. Lewis was. So
No, he was in. I think it was more just
proper
academic.
Yeah, the academic world, I think, is where there was tension.
Like you said with Monsters and Critics, I mean, that was not written to the general public.
Yes, no, it was.
Written to.
That was November 25th, 1936, in front of the British Academy. Let's see. Beowulf, Monsters and Critics was the Sir Israel Gallant's memorial lecture to the British Academy.
Yeah, so we're talking like in an academic circle, for sure. I just think people probably wrote it off as, well, that he's always been into Icelandic and strange things like that.
He's that strange guy.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he was well respected.
I think over time he became that. I think initially, again, he was shy about acknowledging his little side.
But that's why
he was always self-deprecating.
They accepted him because of that. We're staying in the British society is to make a big deal about yourself.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't kind of promote yourself, they'll forgive a lot.
On Fairy Stories was originally an Andrew Lang lecture given at the University of St. Andrews on the 8th of March, 1939.
Very nice. Andrew Lang, of course, would be the famous collector of fairy stories.
Oh, okay.
The blue fairy book, the green fairy book, we had one of each colored.
Okay.
They're like classics from the early 1900s. He basically gathered, so it wasn't just, say, from Germany, like Grimm's, but he tried to anthologize fairy stories from all over Europe. And, yeah, very cool. Yeah, for sure.
Did you have anyone? I mean, you were talking about creating, using the Tengwar for Doctor Who and such, and I almost maybe quickly looked there at one point where I read a section that was talking about the sub creation of that, and that would be very applicable to what you're doing. What do you think?
I think so.
I think the interesting thing is that with Doctor Who, as an idea,
Longest running sci-fi series ever.
well, but the idea is that we were talking about this. My family and I were talking about this. My daughters have been, we've been watching old episodes because now they're into it. So they're almost done with David Tennant his last
That's not
season.
old episodes.
No,
That's the
no, I'm not talking about classic Doctor Who. I'm talking about since the restart.
All right.
Since the restart.
Yeah, I agree, because I have the early like Lost episodes.
Oh, right. And we
Tenet's my favorite.
Okay. Tom Baker's.
I like Tom Baker. Yeah. But anyway, as I was saying that when you look at like the fact that they've had now, I think they're on the 5th Doctor since the restart, and so Capaldi,
It's fourth.
is it 4th?
Yeah.
Eccleston,
Smith, Eccleston, Tennant.
well, Smith was after.
Yeah,
Tennant.
Well, I'm not doing an order on
And
this.
then
Four.
Tennant, Smith, and Capaldi.
Right, so 4. But what's interesting again is this idea that like, well, how come it keeps going so well? And it's this idea. So how do you have consistency? How do you have like how do you maintain like the story with different doctors essentially? And I think what's interesting is that you have certain things that are always the same, even though something regenerates. And I thought, well, is it because he has a different person who's with him, and then that person is kind of the familiar one who kind of bridges it? But then my daughter said, no, actually, after when we started with Smith, he has a brand new, assistant with him, so it's not there's no carryover at all.
It's the TARDIS.
It's the TARDIS. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of cool, and I wonder, that in some ways is not so far off of fantasy and what Tolkien was getting at, because it's got the inner, to be so in science fiction, to be believable, what does it need? The inner consistency of reality. I don't know.
Consistency of that reality.
Reality is
And as you said, it didn't matter if it was past or future.
right.
So
It's not completely. I mean, he obviously it's using ideas, like fantastic ideas, but what I mean is that it's always got one foot from the science how it will.
that as well. It's like one in, one out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about the TARDIS, I have just rebooted another Firefly role-playing game group, so I binge watched Firefly and Serenity, Joss Whedon's, and again.
My wife and I just ate that up.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's such a shame it was Phil Love.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
It's like, what?
one of the things Whedon talks about though is that Serenity is the 9th character, or 10th character.
Yeah.
Something. It is a separate character. It is its own entity. The TARDIS, they really went into that with the reboot. The TARDIS is this living entity. The earlier classic Doctor Who, you didn't get that as
It was
much.
just an object.
There was always a little more. It was home.
That was
It was more than a house. It was more than a transport. It was home.
That
So
was
it
an
had
idea
that.
pioneered by Gene Roddenberry.
With the
Oh.
Enterprise.
Oh.
I'm thinking about that one.
His Bible states that the Enterprise is a character.
Okay.
That's kind of where that origin point for that is from.
I have a friend over in Seattle that's my mother's age, so he would be 82 now. At one point, he was working as a bartender on a little like cruise type ship in Puget Sound. And it was a weekday, and he said there were virtually no customers on the ship, almost, except for just very few. Two of them were Gene Roddenberry and his son.
Oh.
And he because it was so slow, Roddenberry engaged him in conversation. He said they talked for over an hour.
Oh my goodness.
About all kinds of things around Roddenberry's philosophical approach to Star Trek and what he was trying to say, what he was trying, the voice he was trying to.
I heard that his in the original series, his storylines were based on morality, medieval morality.
Interesting.
Well, it's heavy reliance on or drawing upon Shakespeare and stuff.
That's true.
Talking about the objects as characters, what about the One Ring?
Oh,
Jackson
yeah.
really seems to emphasize that as a character and a personality and will
Yeah.
unto itself, not just an extension of Sauron, but its own, trying to get back to its master.
Although that is a direct quote from
You bet. No, that's to say is how. So Jackson really did bring that out. How strongly would you say that fits as a separate character in the Lord of the
In the
Rings?
scene where Lily drops it on the floor and Gandalf reaches down to touch it, do you think the eye of the sea is the Sauron or the actual entity of the ring?
What do you think?
in the stories. I mean, because just I don't want to go into the movies right now, but I think that as he writes, I think it does. I mean, I think what you see is a story that, as Tolkien said in the other letter we read, it will probably work out very differently in writing itself. So I think the ring becomes more and more of a significant character, and certainly as Frodo escapes from the Tower of the Orcs there, Gryffindor, I think that, the ring is working against him, and it's just so heavy, and it's not just that he's carrying this burden, right? Because it does not want to.
It doesn't want to be destroyed. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Okay. Yeah, I'm just like, how much did Tolkien anthropomorphize the ring?
He definitely says that Sauron put some of the spirit into it.
Right, well, we know that. But how much did it become its own entity rather than just a fragment of Sauron? Like, because it lived away from the master host, Sauron, for X hundreds of years. Thousands? Yeah, thousands of years, whatever. So, did it create its own variance and personality and will and things like that? So
I think that maybe not that, yeah.
Okay, I was just curious if there's anything that might have filled in.
Do you think there's an aspect of like the Voyager Doctor becoming sentient because of all the time spent in operating by himself?
Ricardo?
Yeah,
well, I wonder. I'm just throwing it out there. Just because they talk about the TARDIS and such. And Firefly.
Yeah, I think
How far do you take it?
Yes. That's a very interesting question.
Especially with the TARDIS wants to have the episode where the TARDIS is put in human body and established as a character that helps it establish it more as something.
Is that the one where Rose got possessed?
Well, it was yes. Well, where's the power of because that didn't the Doctor take it from Rose because she would have died.
It would have burned her out. Right?
Yeah, that's why he had to regenerate, right?
And I think there's one later where they go to this place. It's like all these old time machines that are wrecked, and there's people there that salvage body parts from people and like take them and put it on themselves.
Oh, right.
Alive, and the TARDIS gets into one of their bodies.
The clock people?
Yeah,
The clock people, whatever they were, yeah.
Which season is that?
Sixth.
The one where Rose got possessed is when Jack became immortal.
Yeah.
And that freaked the Doctor out.
Yeah.
That's season Captain Jack Mortal. I think that's season 1 of the new Doctor Who. At the end, very end of the season.
Yeah.
I think it's because that's when dies, regenerates.
Oh, yeah.
But my favorite episode is the spinning Christmas tree.
As a quick aside, just a quick poll, what do you think of Capaldi?
I
What's the new Doctor?
I haven't seen
haven't
that.
actually watched those yet. I've heard too much bad stuff.
Really?
I've heard all the stuff, but he's not as fun. I have to watch it. It may be just different than what
Oh, he's very
I've
different than the others.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what I've read in the media, is ratings have dropped dramatically
Really?
this last season. And
Oh.
I can say this, is we've recorded every episode on our DVR, and I believe 2 have been marked.
Oh, my goodness.
And I have 3 daughters who are pretty ravenous Doctor fans.
I
Wow.
think that ratings
Is it because he's older?
I think it's part of it is they're trying to start a new like these
New
old
arc,
ones
right.
and these new ones, and this is supposed to be like a new section in itself, starting with Paul.
Well, I'll share my thoughts in a minute, but that's interesting.
One of the things I've wondered is not
Because
so
I have
much
seen all of it.
his age, but the persona of the character shifts so much. You look at like Tennant, just that charismatic, vibrant, bubbly, and that's not there,
Right.
right?
Well, they make fun of that. What about you? Have you seen any episodes?
I haven't seen this latest Doctor Who.
What about you, Richard?
I have a hard time catching it.
Okay. So I watched all the episodes. I recently finished the last one, the Christmas specials.
Right.
And personally, I'm always an odd duck this way. I don't know why this has. I really like Capaldi the most out of the new Doctors.
Wow.
Because for me, and people comment, he's a combination of the first Doctor and the third and fourth Doctor, and a lot of the personality and
So you think
his
it's a return to
mannerisms.
some of that older?
So, well, it feels like what I originally fell in love with the Doctor, which was the first whole generation.
Bring you back to that.
It brings me back to that. Now, he's less, you see only snippets of the fourth Doctor in his charisma, but you do see in his hardness and his brilliance a lot of the fourth Doctor. You see some of the Third Doctor in his protectiveness and caring of others. 'Cause the Third Doctor, Tom Pertwee, was he started a little hard, but he became nicer as he progressed. And then the Fourth Doctor was a little gloomier than the third. And then the first one, of course, was grandfatherly and very elderly. And this Doctor, the 12th Doctor, has elements of the first, third, and fourth very strongly. I was glad to see it get away from the clowniness of Smith, especially, but even Tennant's hyperactivities. I really thought that, Eccleston, I liked well enough, but he was a little flat. And Smith and Tennant, and in the 50th anniversary, they're like, what's with this clown? John Hurt or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Like, you're the clown and you're the teenage boy.
Yeah, right.
So I summed it up beautifully, I thought. And I was like, where's your self-respect? Where's your dignity? Where's any of this? That was the nice thing about the early Doctors, is they had both the clown and the child and all of that in there, but also had this dignity and this otherworldliness that definitely made him separate from us. And I felt like with Smith and Tennant, a lot of that was
That's why Tennant
and that
resonates with younger people.
Exactly. And so I'm wondering if with Capaldi, he's older. They're talking about his very scary meme. They always make fun of his eyebrows and how throughout the show. And I love that the show is able to joke about that, and even he jokes about it. But so Tennant and Smith were way out here. They were out here.
Yes.
Now it's been brought in.
Yeah, I think part of that might have been supposed to be him after the Time War was the Doctor.
Well, it
character
shook him up.
Yeah,
after we saw
overcompensating
it.
for after what happened,
Yeah.
less serious.
And he is.
Sadness.
Early on, he's like, "Am I a good man?" And she says, "I don't know."
Mm-hmm. That's
And
always
he doesn't
that
know.
little
Through this
question.
whole arc so far,
Mhm.
he is really struggling with trying to make up for the bad thing he's done, and the practicality of I should just do this anyway for the greater good, even if it costs a dear friend or wife or something.
And keeps getting slapped.
And she is really, and I felt they took this to a deeper level, but I could see why for the pop culture this would be less appealing.
Yeah.
Because it's brought in, there's a lot more meaningful glances in the moment rather than saying it out loud. And I could see that generationally making a difference. So for me, coming from the previous generation, I love this new Doctor. I like his curmudgeonliness. I like the mixture of it with humor, but the younger generation may not connect with.
The younger generation has been trained by Hollywood movies to expect lots of action.
Well, I'm not gonna get into that because then we'll get into generation bashing and all that. But specifically, why did Tennant and Smith and such connect so much with the younger generation? And I think a lot of it was that he was less alien. He doesn't, right? And Smith and Tennant don't seem alien. They seem
It's not Hollywood, is it?
A lot more
It's
younger generation hasn't seen the original movies. They're
They don't
connect with
Right, exactly. You don't see the link
Yeah.
and everything. Exactly. And it's hard to get a hold of the old stuff.
It's
Not all the episodes are there.
motivated enough to go and watch this current season.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear what you think about that, because this is just my
And
opinion.
I tried to watch some of the original Who on Netflix, but I just couldn't get
There's
over
no
it.
action and stuff.
And
It's
it
really,
actually, what I couldn't get over was just the set when they tried to do CGI, how they did the.
well, there wasn't CGI until the
No.
80s.
No, but they tried to do-
Cardboard.
Yeah, the cardboard.
The special
and then
effects, it was their special effects,
Yeah,
yes.
whatever you want.
Very cheesy.
Special effects, their interesting. I needed to, if I watch it, I need to have it on while I'm doing something else.
You weren't able to get the suspension of disbelief to get into the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
The
That
immersion
is a
wasn't
problem.
there.
I was able to see the original.
Yeah,
Some of
Yeah.
the original episodes.
I have pretty much everything the first Doctor that exists. A little smattering of the second Doctor, there's very little of that available. A few numbers of the third Doctor, and then I'm almost done collecting the fourth Doctor.
But they did go over some of the, didn't they?
They go all the way to the ninth Doctor.
I think the BBC.
I once was able to see some of the original episodes because the PBS channel had put it on.
Yeah, that's where I grew up watching it, was PBS.
Well, right, but they restarted the series. So they were in the John Baker one, and as they said, well, we don't have anything new, so we're going to start from the beginning, and they put that, and apparently they locked the vault because all the rest of the shows, the rest of the meeting and everything, they kept showing the Doctor. Well, it's supposed to only be an hour long.
Okay.
But it kept going, and
Interesting.
and they put subtitles up saying this show will not be seen tonight.
Oh, interesting. So, Yeah, if you get a chance to watch, I'd love to hear what you think about that. Now, did you know any of the old Doctors? Did you ever watch any of those? So you wouldn't have that thing right. So it'll be interesting to see as you watch it. Why?
Maybe now I should,
That's watching the old stuff is a labor of love and effort.
But see, this is one of those few shows that has both old and young devotees
Yeah,
to it.
50 years.
And not only that, but the fact, like, my daughter thinks it's hilarious because, like, with the Time Wars, or and you'd see, like, oh, they were able to put these doctors in at the same time, you know?
Right.
And there's that cool kind of, whatever, you know, where you can have that feeling of continuity. That's the word for it.
Yeah.
And even the little
Yeah, and there's many of
icons and
those. There's the
merchandise
3
and
Doctors and the 5 Doctors. Like throughout the decades, they reunified the Doctors multiple times.
yeah.
Now, another interesting thing from the old series. So you might be able to get through the first stuff, but as you said, there's this suspension of disbelief. The effects bug you too much. What I liked about the early ones is they were much more dialogue and story driven. Because they didn't have the effects, action was limited and it was much more. You were literally watching a play on stage, and that was kind of the level of effects you were doing. So you had to allow yourself to know, well, I'm not going to get modern special effects. This is a theatrical production, basically.
you know, it because of my age, I grew up watching
Right,
things like Lost in
exactly.
Space.
So that might, yeah, and it's better than Lost in Space. But
So I might make it.
Yeah.
so the interesting thing is, so it started in '61, prior to Star Trek, and those early episodes, a number of times they do things like Macbeth and other Shakespearean and the ancient Romans and things like that. There's a lot. In fact, the earliest Doctor, because his TARDIS is immobilized at one point, he's stuck on Earth exclusively for years, which you see a lot of the reboot of him being on Earth rather than other planets. Other Doctors got to roam the universe, but that created budgetary items. So part of the reason why they locked him on Earth was to save money, because it was a lot cheaper.
But see, I think that's part of the if you will, the
They talk
DNA of
about
Doctor Who, the show, that they are able to do a lot with little. And
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
I like that because
Yes.
even with, like, say, the newer series, what you have essentially is you do have special effects, but I would say maybe because they don't have enough money, but it's not like on steroids.
Yeah, you're not watching
The
for the special
people,
effects.
no,
You're
you're
watching for the
not.
story.
You're watching for the story, and you're watching for the interplay of people and how there's this tension because, you know, so this, you know, whether it be Martha or, you know, whatever, Donna, you have all these different people, and how do they come in contact with the Doctor, and you know, kind of that kind of in between role, where they feel like torn because and I think they really did this with Rose, where once they've been out and seen what there is with the Doctor, then they come back and it's just like, it's not the same.
And this new Doctor with her companion, I'm forgetting her name, I'm blanking on it, Clara. So she's a school teacher. And she's already been through some of these things. Of course, we've seen from earlier episodes other scary things can happen to her. But so she does things, well, with this 12th Doctor, she's constantly, like, for lunch breaks, she's going on adventures all the time with him and such. And it gets crazy, but she's addicted to it. And this comes out that she's addicted to this adventure. Because she comes back and it's just, you know, she still loves the teaching, but it's so mundane, exactly. And even when the love interest starts to come into her life, she's torn between the adventure with the Doctor and this love interest, and the Doctor's jealous.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so there's that tension
In
too.
a
So
passive
you get
aggressive way, probably.
not so passive. No, he's calling them names and everything to her. All it's stupid. No, the 12th Doctor is a curmudgeon. He's definitely a curmudgeon. But I like it. I like the curmudgeonliness of him.
But I'm wondering when they will have the next regeneration, and he's
Well,
got
I wonder
ginger
because
hair,
you're only
right?
supposed to have 12. I know they keep saying that.
Well,
For
it's
12.
actually off to 13 now, and at the end of
Because
the
of the War
previous
Doctor.
season,
Right.
and in the previous season, how they did it because he went into like got hit by the time thing, and he got a new set of regeneration.
Oh, see, I was figuring out how the heck they were going to do that. I'm like, oh, okay, they're going to cheat.
There was an episode with
I missed that.
Cyberman where
Yeah.
I've seen
he
all of it, but I
got, he
guess
got
I
his
didn't play.
regeneration restored.
Yeah.
But what does that mean we're up to now? Does it still mean help?
We're at
13. That's why it didn't make sense.
So this is the last one.
No, because he
It was reset, so
Right.
it's 24.
Yeah,
beats the
He's
master.
cheating.
He's at the first one of the new set of regeneration.
Oh my goodness.
And there's a new
Yeah.
twist with the master too.
Oh, that's
So-
handy.
I know, I heard it.
Oh.
Now the show can go for another 50 years.
What's the
We're good.
man?
Yeah. Do you really think that they ended after
No.
all?
No.
There was
You know, that's
that-
the hardest thing is when somebody makes a really good show or movie or book.
We don't want to do
That's it. Well, I think sometimes it's better.
Sometimes just cutting
For
it off and
with those.
just
Yeah,
making
we're not
it,
gonna
and
keep
it's
it going.
principal
They
stuff.
made it 50 years. Let's keep it
Look
going.
at Star Trek though. And you had the original series on, and it's like, okay,
But
that's
it's
it.
finally
And then there was
fizzled
like
out,
this
though.
huge, like, gradual kind of build of fandom until finally it's like the first movie came out. It was like they spent like 10 minutes, I swear, just panning over the Enterprise.
Yeah.
I think when Roddenberry died, the holding
Yeah.
vision began to
Yeah.
decay.
Yeah.
And I
Although
think
there's over 100 episodes available from fandom. Paramount eventually
Yeah,
allowed
there's
to stay
on
online.
YouTube.
But
there's a
many
video
different
of
branches.
But I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much in the, yeah, I don't know. I haven't actually watched any of the new Enterprise movies myself.
So to tie, go.
No, I see, you know, the
Oh, you
decay
mean the
there in the
reboot?
series,
Yeah.
in Space Nine and Lowe's, which was the
Mm.
last series.
Which
Well,
wasn't
actually, it wasn't.
was actually a ripoff.
Same
Deep Space Nine was a ripoff of
Spider-Man.
Babylon 5.
I like
They
those.
literally
Right.
stole his cards.
My opinion.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They stole J. Michael Straczynski's cards, copies of them, and tried to replicate them. They literally ripped them off.
I did not know
The first
that.
year and a half, 2 years.
And as soon
Then
as you see that, I can
they
see
didn't
the
have
parallels.
those. Yeah. And B5 was before, and I think it was
Yeah.
much better than
I like
this.
I liked it.
You know, I like B5, and you know why?
Why?
Because it wasn't a rehash of Star Trek.
Yeah. No, that was
It was
beautiful.
original.
It's my favorite sci-fi series ever. So to bring it all together back to Tolkien. Here we are talking about a generational difference in how the Doctor is presented and how it connects with a different generation because we're presenting it a different way, even though the themes are probably all the same as they were in the first Doctor. But if you were to watch the first Doctor, the interface that you experience gets in the way of your engagement with the story that those of us from that, and I'm not from that generation, but we're able to connect with without that getting in the
And
way.
I think that like with the older doctors, like if I saw it actually live, like it was presented in like play format, that's how they did their movie.
Yes, yeah,
I
because it was
saw,
radio,
like,
it
as
was a
a
radio
person.
show.
On
Like I
stage.
could watch it like an on stage thing. I
You
would
allow
appreciate
yourself
it.
to go, oh, that's stage and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, like.
And that's how you have to watch the old shows. If you
Yeah.
watch them that way, then you can focus on the people stories. Well, anyway, so here where we have the same stories basically, but having an interface issue with the different generations. Here we have the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. We have them in book format. We had the old Ralph Bakshi and the other
Break it fast.
Rankin Bass versions in format. And we grew up with those as kids, and we loved them as kids, even though, you know, they're campy and cheesy and all this. We grew up with that, we were little, that became a personal connection. And of course, we have the books. Fast forward to Peter Jackson's interface on those stories. They're roughly the same stories, even though certain specific plot things have changed. It's the same story, but the interface has changed. Here, we're unhappy with a lot of what they did with the action and everything else. But meanwhile, the books themselves, I would argue, still remain applicable to current generations.
Yes.
It's the interface presentation of them that's trying to meet the current pop culture desires that breaks something and makes it no longer timeless, even though the story itself is. And what do you think of that with Lord of the Rings?
That's spot on. I totally agree. Interesting
I
perspective.
haven't seen the last third of The Hobbit yet, but I've heard
I haven't
about
either. I've
it,
seen the
it's
first two, I haven't
kind
seen it.
Like I heard that the fighting's really short, and that's kind of disappointing, like how they.
Huh. The Battle of Five Armies is actually short.
Yeah, it's actually short.
Compared to Helm's Deep, you mean?
Oh, okay, no, yeah.
Taking the time.
Like what I heard, like how they did it, the actual action stuff is like really
Mhm.
short, and they put other scenes that weren't as important and make them
Mhm.
longer.
I do like in the first thing, or the second one where he actually learns about Golder and all that. I like it. See, when he fills it in and it's there, like when he filled in the Battle of the Ents on Isengard, I thought he did a great job with that, even though it wasn't in the books. You saw the after effects, and I thought, okay, that worked. When he made stuff up that wasn't even there, that's where I felt he kept breaking.
And I don't think that they should have brought Legolas into The Hobbit, because that
What brought what?
put Legolas in The Hobbit.
Yeah, that was kind of weird.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons he was so popular in Lord
I
of the
know,
Rings.
yeah, see, that's.
It's the difference
Yeah,
between
anime.
it's the difference between possible and beneficial. Yes, it's possible he could be in there, but did it really
For the,
change the
for
story?
the record, I don't believe they brought Legolas into the Hobbit. I think they brought Orlando Bloom into the Hobbit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
And what that means to me, and what that is, that's an infusion, a monetary infusion into the Hobbit by bringing
Yeah.
him in.
Yeah.
And it's not because of the character Legolas, it's because
No.
of the actor.
Yeah.
Yep, it's because of the actor and what that does to drive more revenue,
And
I think.
Anime has a term for this. If you know it,
No, I don't.
fan service.
Oh, okay.
So in
That
anime,
has a different connotation.
well, that's taking it, but it's the same thing. I would argue psychological. So long, full shots of robots and mecha, sexual elements, long fight scenes and violence are all considered fan service as they're specifically aimed at pleasing the fans of any given show. Right? You have your core story in the anime and your core characters and all that, but then we add these things in specifically to keep them, the other people hooked that just want to see that. And I already Peter Jackson has fallen into that with his representation of the movies. He started out here and increasingly added more and more fan service to each iteration of the movies as it progressed, because it's what sold. Even though he got farther and farther from telling the actual story.
And I have to say, again, with respect to the creative abilities of Jackson and Company, that is the very opposite of what you just read earlier about Tolkien's vision of what fairy story and fantasy is really, what it's all about, and what's transcendent or like timeless about it. And that is that if it's more like with the Lord of the Rings, it causes you to go in. It's like the Russian dolls. Wow! Oh wow! Oh wow! Whereas with this kind of where in a sense you have a retelling, but it is in love with itself almost.
Yeah.
Where the excitement is based maybe less and less on the story alone, which of course is still the core, but that you're adding layer and layer and layer, bigger and bigger package, and then pretty soon nobody really knows what the dimensions of the story were, because now it's like
Unrecognizable.
it's a bit unrecognizable.
Some
Just some
It's too much makeup and flash and costume.
they're stretching a little far. They're going away from the story.
Yeah.
That makes me think of one of these spoof movies where this guy he gets in a gunfight, he pulls out this pistol, starts putting on a silencer, and then they come back, and he's got more items that he's putting on this gun, and then when they come back, he's in this anti-aircraft gun that he's using to shoot people with.
And over the top.
Yeah.
Sounds like something Weird Al would do.
No, it was I don't remember what my mind escaped me, but it was a series of comedy movies that didn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
Well, we should start wrapping it up. It's 2:56
Yep.
Pacific time. So we left off with letter 92. So no letter 93 plus will be what we read for next month.
Okay.
So we know that much.
Thanks,
What else
Dave,
do we-
and
yeah, thank you so much.
That was
to
really
both of you.
awesome.
Like, wonderful. I hope you can make it to future ones. Second Saturday of each month normally. If you want to be on the email list, give me your email.
Yeah, I got it.
Excellent, and you'll get added to the announcement list. We're on Google Plus, on Facebook, Twitter, all those.
We're talking about growing participation.
Yes.
What about setting up a meetup group?
Um,
Are you feeling?
I'm already a meetup supervisor for the local gaming. About 315, 20 people.
I think I've seen that.
If you host it, you have to pay money, so I pay like $70 a year to
Yeah.
run it. And I haven't asked anybody.
What's the advantage? Can I ask?
It's a local community.
Kind of advertising.
You organize meetings, and people say yes, it's RSVP.
So it gets the word out better.
Well, I don't know about better.
It's the original design, I think, was to gather people together who are interested in like-minded topics, so that they can
Right.
know about each other and meet.
On a local
Help them find each other.
Yeah, that's how I got involved with the writers group.
It's certainly possible, but I would have to fork out another $70 to run one, to create a new group like that. But I'll think about it. It's not a bad idea. I've had good luck with it. I now have 7 gaming groups because of it, for my research. And most of those I generated from
So he's working on his degree for recreational therapy is
using role-playing games as an intervention modality. Yes.
I read your sticker.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Look at that.
I read that earlier before.
Yeah, so I was nominated this fall to take over when somebody else stepped down. And I've been nominated since. We're up 320 US members for Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls. So, but yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. I mean, I've got all the others. I'll have to consider. It's just the money costs. It's not much, but it all adds up.
I like playing with social media tools to grow.
Yeah, that's all I use them for. I don't use them for my personal stuff. I only use them for
participation.
communities.
Well, that's the thing. We actually have a great thing going on here, but just a lot of people don't know about it, and we've been trying to just keep it going for a couple of years, and at times it's hard when we have such a small group because if somebody's sick or whatever. We can really depend on Hawk to kind of do the whole
it'd be nice to have some
technical
You're
side
a
of
single
it.
point of failure for infrastructure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
So we really love people coming and having their fun.
I don't know if you guys would be interested. I've got I think I've got one on a pretty current, I think it's a Logitech 1080p webcam.
I have a few of those.
Oh, okay.
It's certainly a possibility. It's just more things to fiddle with, and so I've just kept it simple. I used to use separate cameras, but Plus sometimes didn't recognize them at updates, and they seem to be better for laptops.
Google Plus gives us a lot of trouble.
But it's the best interface because it automatically uploads to YouTube. People can stream it real time, and the archive is automatically there from the channel.
I agree.
But it's still buggy. And anyway, all of that is great, and all that would help. And just having a second who can help with the tech would be helpful too. So
Well, when I'm around, I'm happy.
wonderful. And the reason we don't do this at my house or at a private room like he offered for us to use the conference room next door is this walk-in event. Because we want to be seen.
We can invite
because people show up. He was a walk-in. I think you just.
I found you in the library.
We wanted
you
to
come to the
be
library.
talking loudly last summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were a walk-in because we were, interacting.
We're almost done.
Yeah.
Give us 5 minutes.
Nice.
So, so we gotta wrap it up. So letters 92 onward, maybe spend a little more time on the Eminem and Mallory.
Yeah.
And whatever other current. You guys may have then seen the third movie. We'd love to hear your comments if you can join us. If you can't make it in person, join us online. We'll have lots of material. So we're back to doing this monthly on the second Saturday each month from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. It's TolkienScholars.org. TolkienScholars.org. And and we're on Facebook under Tolkien Scholars, Twitter at Tolkien Scholars, and Google Plus, all of those. And there's an email list if you want to get announcements and conversation. Just let us know. Thank you so much for being there. Thank you everybody who's online. Wherever you may be well, Namai.
Bye, Artemir. Got a guy in Finland who
Oh, yeah, I have a couple of Finland.
yeah.
That would be that essence too, right?
Yes, there, yeah.